In today's episode, we'll be doing a combo showcase involving Solemnity. This is a pretty interesting card. For 2 generic and 1 white, it is an enchantment that reads, players can't get counters. Counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. There's a lot of commanders that have things to deal with counters. Commanders like Atraxa, Praetor's Voice, Marquesa the Black Rose, Azuri, Claw of Progress, and Animar, Soul of Elements all rely heavily on counters. And with Solemnity on the battlefield, it pretty much shuts these commanders down. So if you have a play group that this is a part of their meta of these commanders, it might be a good idea to throw Solemnity into your deck and maybe throw in a couple of these combos we're talking about. Who doesn't love alternate win conditions? So this can be a pretty powerful white card in a commander deck on its own. But there are also a lot of great combos that work with this card that can be alternate win conditions or just mess with your friends. And can even completely stop them from playing the game. I don't advise that one. Commander's supposed to be fun, but if you want to be that guy. But let's take a look at some of these combos. The first one I'm going to mention is pretty much anything that has to deal with cumulative upkeep. The nice thing with cumulative upkeep in Solemnity is, when the cards come into play, they have no age counters on them yet. So if you have Solemnity in play, on your following upkeep, it does not increase its cumulative upkeep to 1, meaning that you never have to pay a cumulative upkeep for that card while Solemnity is in play. But alternatively, if you already had a cumulative upkeep card on the battlefield and it has age counters on it, and then you play Solemnity, you would still have to pay the cumulative upkeep every turn for the already existing age counters on it. So things like Phyrexian Soulgorger, Mystic Remora, Dystopia, Glacial Chasm are now all excellent cards to throw in a deck since they won't get those age counters on them and won't cost you an arm and a leg in mana to use. If you're already running a Rhystic Studies, you might as well throw in a Mystic Remora. It's essentially giving you 2 Rhystic Studies in the same deck. Another great keyword that works well with Solemnity is Persist. Persist is when this creature dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. You can already see where this is going. With Solemnity not allowing counters to be put on creatures, they essentially can never die. So things like Murderous Redcap and Kitchen Finks will just never go away. Since they won't be able to get those -1/-1 counters on them, they'll just always come back when they die. So you can pair these with Sack Outlet card, like Altar of Dementia for an infinite combo to mill out your opponents, or Ashnod's Altar if you want to get infinite colorless mana with these Sack Outlets. Vanishing is also a great keyword to work with Solemnity. Essentially, if you're unaware of what Vanishing is, it is a way of limiting the amount of time something can be on the battlefield. An example of something with Vanishing that would be amazing to have Solemnity in play is Chronozoa. Let's take a look at this. Chronozoa is a 3 colorless 1 blue creature illusion with flying. It also has Vanishing 3, so this permanent comes into play with 3 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter from it. When the last is removed, sacrifice it. When Chronozoa is put into a graveyard from play, if it had no time counters on it, put 2 tokens into play that are copies of it. So with Solemnity, you will have no age counters on it for the Vanishing 3. It won't immediately die, giving you 2, but if it does die, it duplicates. So it makes board wipes incredibly dangerous to play against you, because as soon as your board's wiped, you now have twice as many Chronozoas. A really fun land to actually play with Solemnity is Dark Depths. It's a legendary snow land that reads, Dark Depths enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters on it. You can pay 3 generic mana to remove an ice counter from Dark Depths. When Dark Depths has no ice counters on it, sacrifice it. If you do, put a legendary 20/20 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible named Merit Lage? Merit Lage? I don't really know how that's pronounced. Onto the battlefield. So the crazy thing with Solemnity is, as soon as you play this land, if Solemnity is already on the battlefield, this thing immediately sacrifices itself and you get a 20/20 flying indestructible creature on the battlefield. That can be pretty crazy. And the card that will probably get you the most hated at the table for playing with Solemnity, Decree of Silence. For 6 generic and 2 blue, it is an enchantment that reads, whenever an opponent plays a spell, counter that spell and put a depletion counter on Decree of Silence. If there are 3 or more depletion counters on Decree of Silence, sacrifice it. Now, cycling for 4 generic, 2 blue, and when you cycle Decree of Silence, you may counter target spell. That is not the important part when you have Solemnity in play. The important part is that it gets no depletion counters on it. And if they have no way to counter it, you've basically locked them out of the game. It's pure filth. Another card you can combo with Solemnity, but is probably my last pick over the other cards we mentioned in today's episode is Thing in the Ice. Thing in the Ice is a 1 generic 1 blue creature horror that reads Defender. Thing in the Ice enters the battlefield with 4 ice counters on it. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, remove an ice counter from Thing in the Ice. Then, if it has no ice counters on it, transform it. So when it flips its Awoken horror, it's a creature Kraken horror that reads, when this creature transforms into Awoken horror, return all non-horror creatures to their owner's hands. Now, this card is pretty interesting. It does work with Solemnity, but it doesn't work as well as other cards such as Dark Depths. When Dark Depths enters the battlefield, if you have Solemnity in play, it sacrifices itself immediately and you get that 20/20 indestructible flying creature. With Thing in the Ice, it does enter the battlefield and has no ice counters in it, but you have to cast an instant or sorcery spell to actually get it to transform. It's a part of that if-then. So unfortunately, you can't play it and then wipe the board immediately and have this Awoken horror on the battlefield. What's your favorite combo with Solemnity? Drop a comment below. Also, if you enjoyed the video and like to see more, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and I'll see you all on the next plane.